That's why we're the United States of America, incorporated. The president is actually the CEO of the corporation called the United States of America. When we salute the flag, we say, we salute the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. That means there's two governments. The United States of America incorporated, and then the government, the republic for which it stands, which is the Constitution. Now, when the world, under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when the country went bankrupt and they incorporated the United States of America, the President of the United States, everyone from Roosevelt on, including Obama, have been the CEO of a corporation, the United States of America. And when they gave us all birth certificates, if you notice your birth certificate has all capital letters, your driver's license, your name has all capital letters. Everything. Your Social Security card has all capital letters. That's where they made each one of us a corporation. I do know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, I know you do.
All right. They made us all incorporate. Let me finish.
Okay.
This. Now, the World Bank is now paying the corporate executives of America. The World Bank is paying Obama's salary. The World Bank is paying the salaries of all the senators and congressmen. Under the Constitution, they've all committed treason.
And the police.
And the police. It's all being paid for by the World Bank through the United States of America Incorporated. If you check what I'm saying, you're going to find what I'm saying is the truth.
All right.
But treason is an act against the country, and we're not aware of this knowledge, so they don't realize that.
Anytime someone who swore an oath, Obama swore an oath, Bush swore an oath, they all swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. When they take money from an outside government or an outside force, or a corporation, to go against the interests of the Constitution, to violate the Constitution, they've all committed treason.
See,
Kennedy didn't accept a salary while in office.
It's an irrelevancy in terms of.
No, it's not. It's the problem. It is the cause of the problem.
No.
The World Bank is controlling our government and controlling all our politicians because it's paying their salary.
Wait a minute. Major corporations. Right. Major corporations, yes, and the major banks are today controlling political life and all of society in the US, Europe, and on a global scale. This is absolutely true. It's absolutely true. So regardless of what you call it, or the electoral system, the real problem is the control by the much less than 1% for their benefit.
Right.
And for anything that keeps them alive. And what keeps them alive are bigger and bigger infusions of capital,
Right.
which they sit on. They're not even able to in any way invest it anymore in ways that provide jobs. It is a system at a complete dead end. But what is controlled by the banks? That's capitalism.
Excuse me.
That's capitalism.
I disagree with you. I think that they can invest it to create jobs. If we created maglev trains and eco-friendly energy alternatives for mass transit and worked, there's tons of jobs that can be created. A billionaire, how dare a billionaire become a multi-billionaire? What the point of that?
There are tons of jobs that could be created if there was both a movement that demanded it. But the bigger problem is that capitalism as a system only can survive as long as those who own everything keep being bailed out. And they will demand the bailout at the expense of what we need, even at the expense of what the infrastructure needs. They need to survive and maximize profit every quarter. You could have a CEO who could tell you, I believe absolutely that what we're doing will so destroy the environment that it puts a planet at risk 10 years from now, that global warming will do this and do that. They'll say, I agree with you 100%. But if I don't maximize profit this quarter, I lose my position. This corporation goes down the tubes. And so they will again and again make the most irrational, insane decisions that put themselves, their children, the future of life on earth at risk.
So these are criminals without
Yes,
a conscience
they
that must
are.
be wrested from power.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. But
To ask a question. The actions of the Cuddy Park, I would like for them to talk about how to humanize this inhumane economic system. And a lot of people don't recognize that the economic system is not, it's even counterproductive to democracy. And if they would make a list of criteria by which we will judge the corporations, I think that would be very, very helpful.
So go to the General Assembly and propose it.
I would say start out with the, recognized and abiding by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Human rights, yeah.
Or international labor standards, or respect for the ecology. And have a rating system. When I was a kid growing up, we used to see the Good Housekeeping seal of approval, that had been passed through these, and the rating systems that keep us from getting mortgage loans or whatever, judging by, flimsy criteria. I think we ought to be able to judge Wall Street.
well, absolutely, because there are no human standards in an inhuman system. It's of important educational value to demand it, but to expect it of this system, no, that we can't do. There's someone back here who's had his hand up the whole time, so let me just, no, I agree. I think there are all kinds of demands that can and should be made by the occupation, right?
You by these standards.
Yeah, that's.
And we see that you are failing, you're flawed.
But this system will completely fail. I mean, it again and again, and will fail our hopes and our expectations again and again. Yeah.
The one institution that holds the others together is the Vatican. The Pope is the richest man in the world. The Vatican Bank is the crookedest operation in the world, and it holds vast amounts of stock, bonds, and money in its vaults. There is very little said here in the U.S., but I get a lot from other countries, and they are in a movement to occupy the Vatican. And their objective is to close it down because of the thousands of children that have been molested and murdered. 56,000 Native children in Canada have been found. Hundreds of Native children in Australia have been found. And it's just the beginning. It's on a Nazi scale, because these schools were throughout North, South America, Asia, and Africa. And they've only uncovered, at this point, 2 of them. One in Canada, one in Australia. What can we do to get this thing known here in the U.S. and shut the Vatican down?
Well, I'll just say what I think is that all of these exposés have come to light because a movement within the Catholic Church, of those who were the most abused and oppressed and victims of pedophilia, of all different crimes, by Catholic priests and Catholic religious people. Those who had been abused themselves organized and challenged and made exposés and held demonstrations and began legal suits. And it's actually a very good example of people's power and a determination that has challenged one of the most powerful institutions and financial and religious institutions on the planet today.
And the
and
liberation theology movement, Catholic Church in Latin America, now their presidents and their ministers and the people are progressive. To be a good Catholic or a good Christian is a good thing. And of course, abuse of power is abuse of power. And there's liberation theology that is allowing women to be priests and allowing divorce and stuff, and they just take it to the next level. And so we're all evolving. We're learning how to deal with our conscience and what's right versus what's wrong. It's not right or left politics, it's right or wrong. Torture is wrong, violence is wrong, war is wrong, period. It's very simple.
Just to say though, within the Vatican, though, what happened was there was an effort to shut down liberation theology, to remove from any position of power any progressive religious bishop, cardinal, even local priest, nuns, all different, were literally driven out of the church. And along came a movement of people demanding accountability for the crimes committed against them. And it didn't happen only in the US. It happened in tens of thousands in Italy and in Ireland and now in Latin America and in the US. And they have demanded financial settlements. They've gone to courts. They've picketed in the streets. They've been represented by lawyers. It really shows, by demanding an accounting and demanding accountability from religious officials, they have made a very important challenge, And I think it is an example of the kinds of challenges that need to be made against people who held absolute power, absolute financial and personal and emotional power.
Berlusconi out of Italy.
And it's also important. There was another trend within the Catholic Church in terms of liberation theology that sought to align the Catholic Church with what were really Marxist and revolutionary movements in Latin America, who said, well, wait a minute, we have to be in the interests of the people, and we have to use the social institutions we have in order to organize the peasantry and
He gave power to the people.
Right, so liberation theology was a real current. They sought to defeat it and set it back. I mean, you could look to everyone, of famous, all different leaders who were literally removed from the priesthood, including President Aristide in Haiti. I mean, stunning. People who were genuine leaders and were just defrocked, thrown out of the Catholic Church, made non-priests, no legality to it whatsoever. So
Clark told me the Haitians liked their president, and she knew his lawyer that was going to come on my show that was living in such a destitute way. Couldn't even get the bus fare.
Yeah, and who organized the coup against President Aristide? It was the U.S. who organized the coup, absolutely kidnapped him, put him on a... He had been a Catholic priest, and he was defrocked from Rome because he really sought to represent the poor of Haiti. And then in combination, you could say, and this is how the religious reaction and the CIA and U.S. institutional reaction work hand in hand and have again and again, whether it was in Poland or in Haiti or all around the world. But certainly in Haiti was a good example. There was a U.S. organized coup d'etat. There was a kidnapping of President Aristide. He was literally put on a plane and flown to the Central Africa Republic. Very important. I want to say, and I went with Haitian and media people to Central Africa Republic, where we were actually able to interview President Aristide and representatives of the Congressional Black Caucus, and flew to Central Africa Republic and got him at least to South Africa. But until then, the U.S. simply said, oh, he wanted to leave. You know, so sometimes that's a very important example of where the media can bring forth a story, and our very ability to go there with a video camera and a cell phone and call him up and get members of the international media to meet with him. Really, it exposed that this was a U.S. organized coup. But it shows that, you know, in an earlier age, when the French simply kidnapped the Haitian leader Toussaint Louverture and took him to France, it was months before anyone in the world knew. You know, that was 200 years in the past. So it is forms of technology today can either greater and greater control people, such as when we see the drones, or it can be used for people to seize a hold of information, to communicate with each other, and to challenge total corporate power.
Why don't you just sit up there? You want to sit? I think they're called
Okay.
Go sit next to you. Go sit in the chair.
I'll take the battery.
You're going to change the battery. You're going to ask the question.
Yeah, back here.
How can we successfully challenge the total corporate power?
Oh, wait, let me get that. What was the question? Yay,
How can we
That one's good. All right, you don't have to be battery.
how can we successfully challenge the total corporate power?
All right, the question is, how can we successfully challenge the total corporate power?
Now, you said stand the ground and reject, sellouts earlier, but not that you get much substance after that. How can you?
I don't think this is like a one-sentence answer. I think, right. I think it takes a movement that has to be built from the grassroots up.
No, just me.
And it's getting started. That's exactly how we should see Occupy Wall Street, as an important step, as a start.
And just occupying.
Right.
Occupying and chit-chatting and trying to go somewhere with it, but they are spinning their wheels. I want to
Right.
Do you have any knowledge, anything you can share that would provide friction? They're trying to climb up a steep cliff.
Right.
And they don't have the equipment.
Well, I think what can be done, and I think it's the importance of making demands, because if it's just an encampment, that will peter out. It's important, though, to recognize what's been accomplished, because part of the role of the media is to always marginalize every people's struggle and say, this is insignificant, it's unimportant, you're not accomplishing anything, it doesn't mean anything. So the most important thing, I think, that alternative media could do is highlight what they're accomplishing and project it as widely as possible, and also expose every kind of repression and police attack that has come down, and link it to other police attacks that are absolutely routine, like the stop and frisk policies. See, we don't want to just talk about repression on Occupy Wall Street, we want to talk about what happens every single day in Brooklyn and the Bronx. And so some of it is really making links, because that's going to make the movement genuinely more real. So because I'm talking to people who are involved in media, I want to say putting some of this footage up right away as soon as it happens is a crucial thing to do, and a real contribution to the struggle. It should be seen, this is an important contribution to the struggle. If there's a police attack, when this top officer, white shirt, braid, pepper sprayed those 4 young women, that was shown tens of thousands of times. And it should be shown. It should be shown again and again, because it was just a ruthless police attack. The same thing in Oakland. But all kinds of media attacks that happen regularly should be shown again and again, because it builds anger. And that's important to do. It's important to build anger at the repressive institutions like NYPD, and right up to the CIA and the FBI and the US military and so on. That's an important thing to do. It's important to, I think, there have been all sorts of unions who've given support, logistical support, mass turnout to the occupations. That's very important to highlight their role too, because it encourages and presses and pressures other unions to increase their level of support, not just to defend just always themselves and the group of workers that they're representing, but to look at this in wider class terms. An injury to one is an injury to all. And so that changes the game, so to speak. It changes the rules of the game. And we need to be doing that more and more. I mean, these are just thinking of a few examples, but
how and what demands can we make? Because I know certain things, like I want the automobile industry not to own the rights to the technology of the patent rights to whatever technologies that can also mobilize vehicles or, mobilize other things. They're hoarding these rights and they're preventing the manufacturing of it for their selfish desires.
He's talking about patents and monopolies.
right.
So how can we, a broke-ass civilian, college graduate with no job, have no power to say, let's make these automobiles, and I don't have the technology. They do, it's here, and we are not using it, and it's something so simple. They could go to Detroit and all of a sudden say, instead of making this car run on gas, we're going to make it run on this, and then
that's what Brazil did. They took sugar cane instead of gas. And in Spain, too, they have windmills and solar farms, and the taxis are electric cars. So slowly but surely the countries around the world and people are demanding truth. And we're learning from them, and that's why we're occupying. Because we're eventually going to get there. Because we have the solution.
What he's talking about is critical. There's 5,000 patents on free energy.
There's a technological ability to solve almost every problem that is destroying the planet today, but it's being hoarded. So and there you're up against a bigger question, because we really have to build a consciousness that the entire capitalist system is both at a dead end and deadly. And what we really need is a revolution. I mean, we really need, if we're going to talk truth here. But it doesn't just happen by saying it. It really happens by people becoming more and more conscious of their both power to change things, their ability to change things, and also more conscious of the absolute straitjacket limitations that this system now puts us under, which endangers us all. Which absolutely endangers the planet. And yet there are solutions for just about every problem that we face. I mean, we could remake the globe today. The technology exists for it. But that's not what's being done.
We can change the globe.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that. We can change the globe
through
the technologies. How are we going to make the demand and get it? how are we gonna make it happen in 5 years or less?
All right, I can't offer you one blueprint for that. I cannot.
Do we kill the CEOs?
No violence. That's their game.
Well, I don't believe in violence either, but they're playing the game,
Well,
and they're gonna be killed.
One thing is, a CEO is just the chief executive officer. And actually, the very top capitalists are not executives of their own firms. That is the insanity of capitalism. They'll tell everybody else you're lazy, you're not working hard enough, but the real capitalists have been owning this system for, you know, several hundred years and passing it on. And there's a hereditary system much more than any monarchy has ever been. So while the CEOs have great power and great wealth, they really are the smartest, you could say the most ruthless of the executives. But executives are not owners. So offing one CEO doesn't solve the problem. And this is why the solution comes from the grassroots. It's people recognizing their power and also finally saying enough, both organizing themselves in ways and literally overturning this system. That's what I think it's going to take. But is that one stage where I can say, here's a blueprint and you just follow this and this will grow? No. We have to take what's going on right now.
Supreme Court and file a lawsuit
against
the company or the person
Would you
I
let me
don't think so.
technology.
Can I answer your question?
I have another.
Well, before Joe gets into explaining it, I just want to interject one phrase that will cap it. And this is a phrase, I would hope, a mantra that will go out. And it's called eco-friendly energy versus fossil fuel pollutants. That's it. Hydrofracking, coal, mountaintop removal, oil, nuclear, all of that is, you know, detrimental to our planet.
Totally
We have
destructive.
geothermal, hydro, solar power, electromagnetics. We have and 100 years ago, Tesla had the solution. Buckminster Fuller had the solution. In various countries around the world, they have the solution. And it's basically, we know it. And it's just be aware that, visualize it. That America get up to speed with eco-friendly energy versus fossil fuel pollutants.
Okay, enough already. I got you.
Okay, can I just ask you to speak again, Sarah, because that's what's important to me. I really am so I'm so passionate about the fact that, you know, we talked earlier about the vote is not that important. The vote is not that important. But if it's not that important, why are they going to great lengths around the country to make it almost impossible for people to vote? Okay, so you know, so in our neighborhoods, in our little communities, where we don't have a lot of influence, where others do have influence, can you speak to how important it is that we do vote in our country, not just our neighborhoods, but all around the United States, and how important it is? What significance does it play in your opinion? Because I have my own opinion, and we all have opinions just like assholes, we all have them. But in your opinion.
All right, people died to win the vote, struggled for it, took enormous risks in every single way, in every way. So in that sense, and also women fought for the vote. This was a country that was founded on white males of property having the vote, and everybody else was kept out of it. So the vote itself and the struggle for the vote was extremely important. And throughout the South, of course, millions of people were absolutely kept from voting and participating in political life in any way whatsoever. The vote and winning the vote, the civil rights movement changed a whole dynamic in the South that was very important. And there are ways now that they want to try to take the vote back totally, and they're changing all sorts of, there's important struggles that are developing on this.
The struggle continues. Our vote was stolen in 2000, and then 2004, the computers.
Right, the struggle does continue. It's, the point is that the vote is only part of it, because when people think that political participation is going to the polls every 2 years or every 4 years, and in the rest of the time doing and saying nothing. Then it doesn't matter who's elected.
So they must
It
vote,
really,
they must vote in all the elections.
well,
That's what you're saying?
it's seeing it as much more than voting, because at this point the institutions that really control life in this country and control also the electoral system and control the political parties and control who can run, because to run takes millions of dollars. So every single congressperson has to go to corporations to get that money. That's how they get the money to run, and it's how the banks and the corporations control political life. So unless it's seen as much more involved than just the voting, that doesn't mean you say, oh, okay, I'm going to give up on voting. No, not at all. But to see the struggle as much more than who you get to vote for, because the votes are so narrow. It's between two political parties and who is able to gather the most TV ads. And the presidency is only part of it, because most of the decision-making happens through appointed government. It doesn't really happen by who you elect.
When you say appointed government, when you're talking about the Congress and the Senate?
They decide very, very little. They decide very little. Yes, they decide very little. You could vote, doesn't matter, you could have voted in every election. But if a corporation is going to lay off hundreds of workers and move to Mexico, China, Taiwan, has nothing to do with who you elected. Has nothing to do. Most of the decisions that affect people's lives happen outside the vote, because this is a completely undemocratic system. Most of the decisions that affect your life, whether you have a job or not, aren't decided by who you're voting for. That's taken both out of your hands and out of the hands of Congress. It's decided by CEOs in private in a boardroom to how they can maximize profit. And so every industry, there are entire cities that are being gutted, and the jobs go overseas.
But the Constitution gives a remedy for that.
But
there's lots of remedies.
Okay,
there's lots of
Sarah,
remedies, but it's all about maximizing
Sarah,
profit in the system.
I hear what you're saying, and I certainly know there's truth to it. But this is my thought on this. 8 years ago, when Bush was, 10 years ago, whatever, how many years ago, when President Bill Clinton was defeated by Bush, right? We had an enormous, not deficit. What did we have?
Surplus.
We had a surplus.
Yeah.
We had a surplus, right? And then they decide that they want to have this great war that they wanted to have without people voting on it, or by telling some stories about there was nuclear bombs in Iraq or whatever. And then we had this war. And then the story was that Cheney's people had owned some of those contractors, Halliburton, those contractors, and that they were going to have this war for 8 years,
right,
blow up these countries, right, and then pay these contractors that are associated to Cheney's people to go back and rebuild it again.
Right.
And while they're doing that, they're taking the food off the table of the middle class.
Right.
And now we're at a place where we don't have a middle class, right, because we're paying for this war that should have never happened in the first place. Mm-hmm. And then Barack Obama, being the only one at that time not voting for the war, now he has to go in and try to say, well, we need to have a war in Afghanistan because that's where the Taliban was really at. So to me, it's just like this power of the vote, a political game, because if Bill Clinton was in there and he's a Democrat and we had a surplus and people were eating and we did have jobs and we did have a middle class, how can we say that, even though corporations do make decisions, how can we say that the vote is not the most powerful force that we have. One of the most powerful, not all of, but one of the most powerful forces of a tool that we have that we're not utilizing. Because I know a lot of my people are not voting. In one neighborhood in my Brooklyn, there's 60,000 registered voters in that little community, and only 20,000 came out to vote. Now I know if all those 60,000 would have came out to vote, we would have had a different mayor in New York City.
I'll just to give one example, because NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, which led to the largest gutting of jobs in U.S. history, came under Bill Clinton.
Right.
So.
And don't forget Janet Reno and Waco and Ruby Ridge.
Who's in the White House decides very little in terms of what corporate owners decide. If they can make more money taking your job and the job of everyone and sending it overseas, they will do that. And you have no ability to vote on that. So unless there is really explosive grassroots movements from the ground up that refuse to allow these things to happen, that will, that will go on.
That's what we're talking about.
May I interject something? Clinton was part of the New World Order. The reason that we had a financial surplus under him was it was a high-tech bubble. Suddenly there was industry in America, and we were building cell phones and computers, and all of a sudden there was infrastructure of jobs, and there was everyone was buying cell phones, and there was money flowing, and it was like the stock market was bubbling, and everyone was trading. High school, and the internet was opening up, and suddenly everyone was trading, money was circulating, and so money was growing. Doesn't matter who's in power, the president, just that the country was bubbling with industry and GNP and new product.
It didn't matter who was president?
No, it doesn't matter if Bush or Republican or Democrats sitting in the Oval Office. If the country's working and producing, all that America produces now is missiles and bombs. In the 90s, we produced television, computers, cell phones.
No, I think actually
when you find people that can organize, when you had people like Martin Luther King, and when you had when you had people like Martin Luther King, and you had people like John F. Kennedy, and you had people like Robert Kennedy, it had to do with power and money. You understand? These people knew if it wouldn't have been for John F. Kennedy and his presidency, they wouldn't have had a civil rights bill on the table. If Martin Luther King helped them, they joined together to make a jobs bill for the people that weren't working. So they killed and assassinated these people. So it had to count for something.
Okay.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It had to count for something.
I'm not saying it doesn't count for anything.
He was an intelligent person, a real leader. The only legitimate leader after Kennedy was Jimmy Carter, who thought and stood for human rights and eco-friendly energy. Right. And then Reagan and Bush reversed all that. And since it's been this new world marching order that Kissinger touted of global dominance and military infrastructure.
Right. So
I think the problem is,
you made the point there when Jimmy Carter was president, country was bubbling.
No, I mean really what's been going on for a long time.
And then all of a sudden we went to war with all of this money.
What's been going on for a long time is there have been bubbles or bubbling that are based on speculation and have not been based for quite a long time on developing infrastructure, jobs, or industry in the U.S. And that's why I say that capitalism, the system, is at a real dead end.
Can I take it from there?
All right, so Joe, you want to speak?
Of the floor.
No, I want you to hear me because I've been patient listening to you.
Sure, I will listen to you.
I'm offering as an alternative to voting the people ceremoniously withdrawing their consent from a government that has turned against them. A corrupt government where bribery rules Washington. We have polite names for the bribery, campaign contribution, lobbyists, but it's corruption. So we have the situation of a totally corrupt situation, and not only the government, but as Sarah has eloquently made it quite clear, the economic system is at a dead end. So the appropriate thing I'm proposing is, along with our ceremoniously withdrawing our consent as a whole people, we peacefully engage now in a discussion, revolution by discussion, of exactly what it is that we should consider replacing what we got with. And to answer some of your questions, I wanted to offer the general proposition that we should basically look at the economy with a blank slate. And as a whole people, the main aim is a rational, moral force. And the people who make decisions for other people, we want those people to care about us as opposed to caring about profiting shareholders, a different game to play. That the public corporations have to be rethought, redesigned, but the guiding principle is that they are truly serving the public, that they are truly public corporations. And that we should engage in an intimate, deep, thorough discussion about how people should be treated. Is it right to be bossed around, or is it more a matter of being reasoned with as the way the general game gets played? That a hierarchy of taskmasters is a violation of human dignity, ultimately. And we want people to feel more comfortable in the working situation as we redesign society. So what I'm proposing, again, revolution by discussion, but that we launch with the alternative media, that discussion of what it is that we do have to replace a system that is totally in need of replacement. In terms of the Constitution and cherishing, like Paula, Gloria, and Joe were talking about, the place we are in terms of our sacred documents is in the Declaration of Independence. They talk about how once in a while governments turn against their people, and it's the duty of the people to overthrow those governments. That's where we're at. And so in terms of the election, voting and all that, it is a charade.
Yeah.
That both sides are complicit in murder. That the U.S. foreign policy, as we murder daily, we have basically, I'm proposing that we consider here a scenario of the public waking up. And part of it, you are among my favorite minds in the world. You have a talent for putting words together. But I have always been uncomfortable with your organization, the International Action Center and Workers' World. I had differences, and I tried to come forward at times and do a Messiah trip, but I didn't feel welcome. And the problem was, my problem with Marxism was that there was such a rooting and tooting for the proletariat that I'm saying, well, why squeeze out the middle class? That the guys use the term bourgeois as a dirty word. When here I am from the upper middle class, I've had the advantage of every advantage that you get from money. I enjoyed those things. I, in terms of Jesus showing you what suffering is all about, I'll show you what the society could provide if it was generous. You know, like when we talk about freedom and money, that the more things you can just have when you feel like it and not worry about the metrics of money and all that, as we redesign society, we can think along those general terms. Money is useful for keeping track of things and so forth. So, I do have on the internet that I uploaded in 1996 Joe Friendly's plan for peaceful but total revolution. And basically what I invite in terms of how to think are the next steps, the demands and so forth. The discussion involves experimenting at the economic level with a variety of ways of running things. That I am rooting for individuals to be chosen as leaders of groups, and I'm also hoping that groups can develop consensual dynamics and make good decisions. I think we should try a variety of approaches to how to make things. And we should, as a whole people, decide what should we make, how do we make them. An easy thing to say is that we want quality. We want made in the USA and all that kind of stuff. But beyond that, there is the idea that if the oceans rise 100 feet, we have to move all the machinery upland, that we have to start preparing for tragedies like that the economic issues are so dependent on the ecological, that we have catastrophe looming on the horizon with the sea rise. So that's another angle. But in terms of the American people waking up, I did just wanted to say a national reading of the book Killing Hope by William Blum is a recitation of the sins of American foreign policy since World War II, country by country, that along with all the other corruption we've been talking about, we have consistently taken the wrong side in every interaction with the other governments of the world, as far as I can tell. Except for, it's a question on that Hitler one. Excuse me, go for it.
If I could be of any help on that.
So,
Thank you.
I think it's going to take absolutely a revolutionary transformation of this society. I think this system is at a total dead end. And what we're seeing is a pretty brutal dying gasp. I mean, they will rob us all blind. And there isn't really, and it's shrinking fast, much of a middle class left. It was a term made to confuse consciousness. Most people can only have income as long as they have a job. I mean, it's a tiny handful who have a trust account or trust fund anymore. Who has that? The 1%. The average, not only average, but the overwhelming majority of the population today sells their labor in one way or another. It's even true for doctors and lawyers and, so in one way or another, we're all workers for the system in order to survive, and it's a system that wants to give us less. And it's also a global workforce. There isn't a thing that we use that isn't produced in about 10 different countries. And that goes from cars we drive to clothes we wear to food that we eat. It is produced and even put together and designed all over the world. So there's a global workforce today, and there's a race to the bottom to produce things in countries where you can pay workers, a few cents an hour with no benefits whatsoever, working by the hour. That's it. So this global force has more and more in common with each other. What's different, I think, at this point in history is that this population is able to speak to each other. People really do, around the world, speak to each other and exchange all kinds of messages. And that is extremely important. It's a global working class, I think. And what has to be consciously built is solidarity between workers here really feeling that their problems maybe are not much different, although their standard of living is different, but not much different than Bangladesh or Venezuela or Brazil. In other words, we have to see the common problems. And we have to know and have a vision. I do very much agree, it's a vision, that these problems also are solvable, that work in a way that would benefit workers all over the world, because we're always used against each other. And the wars do that exceptionally. Whenever they create a new war, what they're doing in selling terror as a concept is the idea that someone on the other side of the world is threatening every airport here, every street corner, every intersection, someone we don't know somewhere.
All those
They're,
guys with
they're,
those guns,
they're right. They are selling their right to have weapons everywhere, on every subway
That's it.
platform.
We live
by
in a
creating
society
fear.
that feeds off of vultures, of corpses,
So-
of weapons.
right,
And
so-
and that's what America produces.
So challenging
Bullets,
that,
bombs.
challenging that is extremely important.
And-
It's also why, and I do think, I'm a socialist, I'm a lifelong socialist, but it's not just putting forth a concept. It's having confidence also in struggles from below, because you can dream great dreams, but unless you're thinking, what are the historic forces that move people? And this will go back to the elections.
Well,
Take the civil rights movement,
May-
or
may
the
I-
women's
please,
movement,
let
or the
me- let me
union
just
movement.
speak for a
These were
moment.
movements that came from below. And so I think, or look at the decolonization movement.
Yeah.
I mean, within 10 years, the entire map of Africa changed.
Right.
Where people said, enough. That didn't mean it was the end of struggle. There was neocolonialism, all kinds of banker control. But there have been times when people moved in collective ways and literally said, and it happens sometimes in the space of a few short years, where people say in mass, enough, and they will face dogs and water hoses and guns and they'll organize themselves.
Happening now.
And
Iraqi veterans against the war are standing their ground.
that is true, and that's where we should place our confidence. See, we should have the big dreams. We should have the big picture that we want socialism. We want to do away with this system.
Mm-hmm.
We should have that bigger picture, but we should also have some picture that we get there by building mass movements that come up from below. That the grassroots movement is what has changed history. And we could look at the French Revolution,
Right.
the Russian Revolution, the Haitian Revolution. Those were the movements that literally change history.
Okay, I just want to say, I'm a socialist too. I grew up in Spain. I'm very comfortable with it. But those are scary terms for American mentality.
true.
They don't like the word revolution. They don't like the word communist or socialism. So let's go beyond it. And what Joe was proposing was a very idealistic thing.
Right.
And the evolution of socialism per se is the dialogue and the consensus of the majority, what's right for society. It's very simple. So let us go back to our ancestral roots and know what the Iroquois nation said for their clan, for their community, about working together. And how do tribes in nature survive thousands of generations? They had to learn to provide for everyone and listen to everyone. And it's in the medicine wheel. And if we go back to our tribal ancestral roots and listen to what the Iroquois nation had and what many tribes and throughout the world, the indigenous perspective,
Right.
of working with Mother Earth, working with nature, and working with the community for the future generations, we will proceed together in peace and harmony. Is basically what everyone.
I agree with that.
Even the CEO and the 1%. We want to have freedom. We want to have security. We want to feel good. We want to enjoy ourselves. We want to eat
Right.
good food. We want to have fun, and we want to also be challenged and work and have some productive, interesting work to do. Work is a basic ethic and drive inside everyone. You know, no one wants to sit and watch TV all day, even though they think they do.
No,
Eventually, they want to do something. So
I
we're
agree with
all
that.
on
I
the
think
same
we gotta,
page.
right. I think we gotta, this has been a great discussion and it really has gone all over the globe. Let's end on, actually, on that note.
That's what I'm saying, that we're all really desirous of the same thing. We're all really needing of the same thing.
Most of the time that humans have walked the earth, they have lived in cooperative, collective societies where things were owned in common. The history of private ownership and private expropriation is very short, a few thousand years. Humans have been walking the earth, you know, in the hundreds of thousands and longer,
Right.
and living cooperatively. And children from the age of birth on are basically social cooperative beings. So it's not like you even have to reinvent human nature. We have a system that's archaic, where everything is owned by a handful, and it's made a lot that's sick. And we can redo it, and we could be much more in tune with the way that humans lived for hundreds of thousands of years.
We're definitely getting there. We're, like it or not, the
Right.
evolution is happening. People are coming to
Right.
terms.
People are coming to terms with it and developing that understanding.
Maybe you are going to change your terminology just to accommodate them, and they're going to change their terminology, but the final analysis, we're all looking for the same thing.
Right.
A fair deal, you know, for workers and for everyone. To,
That's right.
And not, you know, and it's okay to make more money. I mean, you know, okay, the fine tuning, whether you're allowed private ownership, whether you're allowed to profit off of my labor, you know, like that was the cool thing about Gaddafi. No employees, just partners in business. And then, you know, social systems that actually evolve and have certain rules. And okay, what is the rule? The consensus of what the majority believes is probably a good.
Well, it's why they want to destroy any example that things can be organized differently. That's what they want to destroy.
We've got it already. We got the
Right.
technology. We've got to have a consensus vote and to have an agreement and for a society and the greater society. So we already have the solution at hand, you know, and we're
Right.
fumbling. You know, we've walked on the moon. We've split the atom. We've created miracles in technology. Why can't we just get our heads together and live in peace and harmony?
Well, that's going to take that movement from below. So on that.
Okay, well, let's thank Sarah.
Thank you, sir.
To be continued. Okay.
I really mentioned, like, historically, like, there were models of movements or revolutions, like,
Is that-
what...
Just a minute.
Well, it's still running out.
Okay.
so
No.
let's put it on the
Let's
table.
run it out,
Thank you,
please.
Sarah,
Okay.
very,
Thank
very
you.
much, as usual.
What's your name?
Hey, sir, you have the mic on?
Oh, sorry. And that was a very good point that you raised. And I'm sorry, it's still
Officially,
on.
no, actually, there's something going on between our brains. It's like, you sense it's.
It was sort of a discussion all over the place, and I didn't really know what we wanted to do.
You did great.
You really presented
I was really
We're all broken hearted. We're all trying to find the truth.
That tennis ball across.
Guess what the two-channel model looks like.
There you can have a walk-around mic with an audience if you do too, right?
Not only that, but here's the thing, I don't know if you've ever heard of this. You could actually have a conversation with two people.
Ah, okay. Oh,
What can we call that? You know,
a
an interview.
conversation?
Hey,
My main concern is magnets.
she's on the drug.
No, they're coming in on her. They're coming down like bolts. She may lose this whole place. Everywhere. It's horrible.
What's the state of
Well, you have to talk about it. It's very, very... Anyway, I'm going to turn this off. Wait a minute. How do I stop it? I push stop.